Well, good evening and welcome to Breathing Free, Environmental Justice and Advancing Black Reproductive Health. I am Dr. Regina Davis Moss, and I am so pleased to invite you to the final discussion in our four-part Rooted in Power, a Black Reproductive Justice series, sponsored by the In Our Own Voice Action Fund. During this series, we are diving into important reproductive justice topics and how these issues are relevant to our community and the movement. This is our opportunity to come together for real conversations about real stuff before Election Day. And so we want you to be informed, equipped, empowered, and encouraged. We are simply better together. So whether you are cooking dinner, driving home, working out, we just want you to take this time to learn about things that are impacting you and your community. Now, you may wonder what the In Our Own Voice Action Fund is. We're a nonprofit organization that is working to advance reproductive justice and defend human rights. We're also the sister organization to In Our Own Voice, National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda, which is a powerful network of organizations that are led by Black women who are unapologetically focused on Black women, girls, and gender expansive people, and 365, 24/7, working to amplify and our collective voice for reproductive justice. Now, how do we advance reproductive justice? Well, we do it a number of ways. We educate and we organize the public, we register and we inform and we mobilize voters. We promote comprehensive policy solutions for some of the most pressing issues facing Black women. We also work with reproductive justice champions at the federal, state, and local levels of our legislature. And most important, during election years, we promote candidates that are committed to our vision of reproductive justice. Now, speaking of reproductive justice, you might wonder what that is. So reproductive justice is the human right to control our sexuality, our gender, and our reproduction. Now, what does that mean? It means that we get to decide if, when, and how we expand our families, and we have the right to raise those families in healthy, safe, and sustainable communities that are free from things like harmful pollutants, dangerous chemicals, and things like toxins and poisons and industrial waste, things that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we believe that can only be achieved when we have the complete economic, social, and political power and resources to make healthy decisions about our bodies, our families, and our communities in all areas of our life. So tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking about the environment, and we have two amazing guests. First is Dr. Astrid Williams. She's an accomplished professional who's serving as a leader for an award-winning organization and the founder of Sienna Girl Jones, where she merges her extensive experience in consumer health with innovative marketing strategies in the beauty and wellness industry. She is passionate about disrupting the beauty and wellness industry and advocating for clean and safe alternatives for cosmetics and personal care products. She has published and co-authored several research papers on environmental toxins and their relationship to breast cancer, and supported the implementation of federal and local policies that promote environmental justice. With a deep understanding ranging from environmental justice to reproductive health, Dr. Williams is particularly dedicated to advancing women's health issues. I can't wait to hear more from her. The other panelist tonight is Mari Copeny. Mari is a 17-year-old from Flint, Michigan, known globally as Little Miss Flint. She first entered the public spotlight when her letter to President Obama about the water crisis prompted him to visit the city and survey the water crisis for himself, was because she wrote that letter. That visit ultimately led to him approving $100 million funding and relief for the city of Flint. In 2017, Mari continued her dedication to social justice by becoming a National Youth Ambassador to the Women's March on Washington and the National Climate March. She has used her platform to not only bring awareness to the water crisis in her community, but to also give back. Her Dear Flint Kids letter project has received thousands of letters of support to the children of Flint from people all around the world. She has also raised over $250,000 for her community, giving away over 1 million bottles of bottled water. 17-year-old, you guys. Wow, I'm so inspired. So let's get right into this. Why don't we start with this first question? So just to help people who are new to the subject understand, can you talk a little bit about environmental racism? What is that? And how does it impact our reproductive health, and how particular for Black communities? Why don't we start with Dr. Williams for that question?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me and being able to present to your audience this evening. And with that, I think it's a very poignant question. As you shared in my bio, I'm very passionate about the issue as it relates to communities of color, Black particularly, in this topic of environmental racism at the intersections of reproductive health. So if we look at it, it's a pervasive issue that can be manifested through the placement, as you shared, through hazardous waste facilities, industrial sites, pollutions in marginalized communities. Frontline communities is another term that's used that can, cause havoc on our health conditions. And so it's a racial injustice, meaning that it's, an issue that you'll find pervasively in communities of colors that highlights the disparities of environmental or lack of environmental protections. It profoundly impacts our reproductive futures in communities if we think of it as it relates to maternal health and also reproductive health. For instance, like chronic conditions such as, ovarian uterine, breast cancer through the toxins that can be found in some of these products that are targeted to communities of colors.
Thank you. And I really want to get into that. I think that's so important because we are some of the most highest users of things like beauty products, and we are definitely disproportionately impacted by some of these things. Mari, do you want to talk a little bit about how some of the work you do has demonstrated that has an impact on reproductive health for Black communities? You're on mute.
Okay.
If well,
This is
we
like a
can move on
really
because
hard
there's a lot of
question.
questions.
This is like a really
You know what?
hard
Let's
question
move on.
for me. Um,
Okay, well, you know what? Let's go on to the next question then. How about that? Um, so we're talking about environmental justice initiatives or activities and how they have an impact on girls, Black girls. Can you talk about some of the environmental justice um, issues that you've learned about and some of the things that you've been working on and how they have an impact on some of your friends and what you know that they have an impact on in terms of Black girls?
well, well, as you know, I'm from Flint, Michigan, so we had the really bad water crisis. So one of the main things that I like focus on that's environmental. That's sorry, that's one of the main things that I do that's environmental based is clean water, and if it not having clean water really does affect the Black community here because once again, we still don't have clean water. That's kind of like a big issue, and it does kind of mess with girls in some way because let's think about it. When all of this first started happening, you couldn't really take showers. Girls are probably on their period and stuff. You're unable to really take a shower because you're scared that you're gonna get broken out in like chemical like rashes that look like chemical burns. Like I know my little sister had got a rash so bad, like it looked like it was chemical burns on her skin. Like like
Wow.
that's how bad the water was. So not that many females were able to, take baths, take showers, and and wash their hair because the water was just like really bad. So yeah.
That's a great example of how it impacts reproductive health. So is the water still like that now? You said you still don't have clean water. Do you still have issues with taking showers and being concerned about chemical burns?
Well now, yeah, the water still isn't fixed, but a lot of the stuff has advanced a little bit, so now we're able to use filters for the showers, so we're able to take showers and not have to worry about getting a rash and, you know, not having like worry because we have a shower filter. But the water still isn't fixed. Like it's kind of crazy how it's still not fixed. But yeah.
Wow. So Dr. Williams, what's your reaction to that? And I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about how when we hear things like that, how do we prioritize reproductive health needs of Black women, girls, and gender expansive people?
Yeah, I think it's a trifecta. It's an intersectionality between environmental justice, social justice, and reproductive justice. If we look at the tenets of both the EJ, RJ frameworks, it states, that reproductive justice is the human right to maintain personal and bodily autonomy to have children, or either to decide not to have children, and to be able to prepare them in safe, sustainable communities. And so right there, the environmental justice, meaning that we should be free of harm, from where we live. Having access to clean water is a human right. And it's unfortunate, that there are communities that are, suffering because they don't have access to these human rights. Also, if we look at those products in terms of, personal care, or, beauty aids and hair care is another way that, we are faced in the form of this. And so, we have to take care of ourselves, in day to day. But there are toxins and chemicals that are knowingly placed in these products, such as if we look at, companies such as Johnson and Johnson, hair relaxer, companies that have, largely targeted the Black community and marginalized us. When we use these products, we don't know, unbeknownst to us, and sometimes they can surface years later or decades later in the case of like uterine cancer, where individuals have used Johnson and Johnson products. I know it's, sometimes it's a rites of passage, where we use it on our babies, but whole families are using it, for different, means for personal hygienes. And so, to be able to, know that these products can harm us is very unfortunate. And so I think involving Black women and girls and gender expansive individuals to make, informed choices, but also to hold these companies, hold the, government accountable, so there can be better regulations of it, of these products, of the, communities, the built environment, the physical environment where we are, so that we can have access to, clean, safe environments.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Right now, the products that we use on a day-to-day basis, like relaxers, and we know the company that is creating these things has chemicals in it that are causing us harm. Is that correct?
Yes,
So
and I
how
don't
are they
know.
getting away with that?
Yes, it's because of the poor regulation, or the very loosely regulation of the society that we live in. And so there's very little, if next to none, laws that regulates the beauty industry. And so that's a loophole, that's a gap in the system here. And so I know maybe 2 years ago, MOCRA, Modernization of Cosmetic Act, which is, enacted by the Biden Harris administration to be able to try to address these issues. But still, we have a long ways to go because manufacturers are knowing that they can take the bare minimum and still, produce these products that are still on the shelves. And so it'd be a great day where we can walk into our big box stores and feel safe and confident that the products that are on the shelves are free of harm. But that, unfortunately, is not the case. And I know, as a side note, to this, I would encourage everyone to watch on Netflix. Just came out the docuseries about Beauty in Black. And so if you watch that, it's very powerful. And it talks about the industry, about hair relaxers, and how the chemists in there knowingly know that there's toxins in there, and how it can affect, our community particularly. So again, having these talks like this to be able to bring awareness and education about it, so we can make, decisions that can ultimately, put us in a better place, hopefully avoid, these horrendous, conditions that we're faced with.
Thanks you. And I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions about this when we get to that time in the discussion. I want to go back to how we can, the community efforts that we can uh, do to address environmental injustices. Do you have some examples of some communities that have done that and that have been successful?
Yes, there are a lot of community-led organizations. One being that I worked with them is Black Women for Wellness. I was over their environmental justice initiatives, their beauty justice, and also the built environment. And so with Black Women for Wellness, which is also within your circle of supporters with the In Our Voices Action Fund, as a nonprofit, they focus on improving the health of Black women and girls through advocating education, and they've led numerous initiatives around reproductive justice, one being with Johnson and Johnson Corporation. And so the executive director, Jan Robinson Flint, actually was able to take down Johnson and Johnson to get them to stop manufacturing their baby products, their asbestos or their talc, based products here in the Americas. But that's not enough because we know that, this is a global issue, not just a domestic issue here in North and South America and Canada. And so being able to also see those that are plied by the manufacturing largely in these industries, who's producing these products, if we look at those, are women of color, and also unfortunately children that can be placed in the roles of, production of these. And so the labor, the occupational hazards that this presents, it's not just for the consumer, but it's also, for those that are in these industries as well. And so it was maybe a year later that Johnson and Johnson ultimately said that they would stop or cease, manufacturing the products, the talc-based products, but still, this is a phase out, a long phase out that will happen over a number of years. But it is some action that shows that we're making some traction in the area of being able to hold, businesses or corporations accountable. Also, We Act for Environmental Justice. They're another EJ organization based in Harlem, in New York. And so this organization empowers community of colors to advocate for environmental and reproductive rights as well. And then also my organization, Cena Jones Girl, or Cena Girl Jones, excuse me, we look to, add beauty products that are largely marketed to Black women and girls that contain some of the most harmful ingredients, and how we can, change that trajectory by awareness and education, so that we don't fall prey, to some of these, harmful, health conditions such as, ovarian cancer, uterine fibroids, fertility issues, and the such in there. So through education and awareness and facilitating, opportunities to be able to have these meaningful discussions.
Thank you. So Mari, I want to go back to you. I know you're very concerned about water in Flint, Michigan. Tell me more about what you did. I know you talked, I read about how you collected over 1 million water bottles and gave those out. How did you get involved? And tell me about some of the other things you're doing to address the water crisis in
Well, it's not just Flint that has really bad water. America has a water crisis and it's not talked about enough. So I have to really want to talk about it a lot because not that many people know. Like, but let's say Newark, New Jersey, they have really bad water over there. Jacksonville, Mississippi, they have terrible water. Like their water levels were way worse than Flint's. That's concerning and that's a big issue. And it's not even just those places, it's everywhere else. Like, and like even in like the more like high-end states or whatnot, people are gonna think, oh, well, just because I live in so and so, we have good water, No, people need to start checking their water levels because if you aren't checking your water levels, you don't know what exactly you're putting into your body. You don't know what's going on. That's why I advocate people to check their water levels. But but yeah, I did give out 1 million bottles of water, but I stopped doing bottled water and I ended up developing my very own water filter. I partnered with this company called HydroViv and you know all that, yeah. So I have my very own water filter. That's something big that I like that I ended up doing. Um and I they don't just get shipped out to Flint, they get shipped out everywhere. Like everywhere in the States. Yeah, everywhere in the States. But that's something more water related that I do because because like water is like a really big thing, and it's like it really sucks that there's like communities out here that don't have access to clean water because their government just doesn't want to help them. And it like, why is it taking other people to help out? Why is the government not, why is the government not really helping? So, yeah.
So what about people that want to get involved? What are some things that people can do? Some easy things that people can do?
Well, it's really easy to get involved. One of the main things is, of course, voting. That is a really big thing. That's the main thing you can get involved. Vote because you'll literally like vote for leaders that will care for your community. There's a lot of leaders that will end up caring for your community. Vote for them and they can end up fixing those issues that you have in your community. Um reach out to organizations and stuff. See how you can help. If you see somebody doing like their own water drive, help out. Like literally like go and help out. Like don't be afraid to use your voice. Don't be afraid to also ask for help either. Cause trust me, I had to ask for a lot of help when I first started doing all this water stuff. So that's like the easiest way to just get involved is to just help use your voice. And yeah.
That's great. And so, you're 17, right? So are you going to be
Yeah.
voting? Do you get to vote? That's amazing.
Unfortunately, I
I
can't
want to
vote yet.
now,
Unfortunately, I can't vote yet,
oh,
but when I turn 18, I can in fact vote. I can in fact vote.
what are you talking to your friends about voting that
Yes, I
can?
have been advocating to all my friends that are legal ways to vote because I did have a lot of friends that were like, I'm not gonna vote. Voting's dumb. No, 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 no. Voting is not dumb. It is actually really important to vote. Vote, especially for this year's election. I have converted a lot of my friends into voting because it's just sad how there's like people that just like don't want to go out and vote. Like you can vote, like you can also there was like what like early voting and stuff like you don't even have to go on and vote. You can like you can do mail-in votes.
Mhm.
Like yeah, just vote,
So
just vote.
when you're telling them to vote, are you talking about the water or what are some of the things you're talking about?
I'm telling them to vote because of the water. I'm telling them to vote because for okay, it's not. I'm not just telling them to vote because of the water. I'm telling them to vote because also you got to vote for people that are gonna fix certain issues in your community. Plus, to make sure that you have a good future. Like especially for reproductive health, like that's a really big thing. Like vote for leaders that actually care about women's bodies, because we don't need a villain in the White House. We don't need a villain in the White House taking away women's rights. Like no, so just vote. Yeah.
Okay. I believe you 100%. So Dr. Williams, I wanted to go back to your
You.
thanks so much for that. So I think I wanted Dr. Williams, I want to go back to the question and the statement I initially made about these corporations, right? You said that one of the things we should be doing is holding them accountable. What are some things that we can do to hold these corporations accountable?
Yeah, so corporate responsibility is a huge one. And so with that, they know that they are certain things that are safeguards that they should be in place in there. So if there's, hazardous chemicals that are introduced in the manufacturing process through the production, or if they're knowingly, putting them in there, is being able to target those key ingredients in there to be able to, remedy the situation. Unfortunately, with that, there is another way that they can get around it. is by, regrettable substitutes. And what this is that, they'll take out one chemical, which is the same class of chemicals, and put it in there. So it still mimics, the harmful or the harm that it, provides to our body. But it's not the original chemical in there. And so basically it's like, a swap, switching out from one for another. And so really trying to get them to have, green and clean processes throughout the whole process, from the manufacturing, but also looking at, labor, as I mentioned as well. Oftentimes those that work in these, types of, companies, we're largely in the, labor industry, whether it be transportation or the production of these chemicals in the warehouse. But also if we look at, frontline communities, if we look at New Orleans, which, Cancer Alley, which is notorious, known for, a lot of these manufacturing companies were placed in Black communities or communities of color, which leads to a lot of toxins and chemicals, which can, manifest through chronic diseases, cancer, reproductive health issues in there. And so corporate responsibility holds them accountable for their actions through transparency measures, reporting requirements, which one of the tenets of MOCRA, the Modernization of Cosmetic Acts, enforces. And so if there are known, hazards or known harm that, has surfaced, these corporations must register those in there. Also penalties and fines, right, for non-compliance with these environmental standards. And so that's very, key is corporate responsibility. So hopefully we can get some more favorable or positive results in terms of, overall for the industry, whether that be in, personal care products, hair care, beauty, but also in terms of, just the society as a whole, because, America is ran, unfortunately, by capitalism and corporations. So.
Thank you. So obviously that depends. We have to rely on the corporation to do the right thing. Are there things we can do? Let's say we go to the store and we buy a shampoo or we pick up the box. Is there something we should be looking for in terms of the ingredients that let us know that this is not good for us?
Yes, and I know we're not all toxic, chemists and, scientists in there, but one, key way is just like, for food products, that are packaged goods by reading the labels. And so that's one way that you can be consumer savvy is by looking at there. And, oftentimes the first few ingredients is going to really tell you what the product is made up of. So if you see something in there, like water or other things in there, like natural ingredients like shea, butter, or either, essential oils. Those are things that, as consumers, we're, readily, knowledgeable about. But when you have these high scientific names like, parabens and phenol, ethylene and all those other types of, derivatives of chemicals in there that are in there, oftentimes are used as preservatives, to be able to extend or increase the shelf life of these products. Again, going back to, uh, capitalism by, getting as much as they can for these goods, over a period of time. But there are also apps. And so I really encourage consumers to be able to, use them, and you can download those. And so Environmental Working Group has one, which is a healthy, living app. And so you can find that based off of your cellular provider. Also, Think Dirty is another one where you can go on there. Cleria is another great one. And also it can be used as an add-on browser. So for those who shop online, they can add this add-on to their browser. So at checkout, it'll scan your cart with the Clear app, and it'll tell you, a breakdown of the different, chemicals, whether they're good or bad. And also it'll give you, substitutes. So if there's something in there that is not, such a great product, it'll give you an alternative that's, more healthy or healthier or clean. So apps are a really good resource to be able to decipher what's the good from the bad in there, but also just doing your due diligence, because greenwashing, I don't know if you know it's real. And what greenwashing is that kind of what you think, a product is good because there are false claims on there, such as, clean or organic or, brightens and all of those things, again, as I, relate it back to the industry, is not regulated. And so, anyone can, slap a label on there that, has these claims that it's going to do things, for you, but there it's not regulated. And so greenwashing is where it's made to, as a consumer, to think that this product is better than another. Another way to do that is just by simply the name. Like if we think of a product that is, in a green packaging, that's in eye view, of you on the shelf as you're, going about, purchasing your products, you're gonna, look at that and say, oh, well, this must be a much, healthier product in there, but it's just the greenwashing that you have from that. And so being able to decipher and knowing which products to choose is a great way to be able to make important decisions for you and your household.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I know we have a lot of questions. Before we go to questions, I just want to ask about policies. Are there specific policies that you are aware of that are currently being championed right now, both nationally? Mari, in Michigan, are there policies that you would like to see passed, or you would like people that can vote right now to be holding their elected officials accountable for? And Dr. Williams, I'll ask the same thing for you as well.
Nationally, I really want to see PFAS be more regulated than they are, because PFAS, as if anybody doesn't know, PFAS are basically a forever chemical and they can cause you cancer. So I would like to see, those regulated more, so they can focus on those, so women aren't out here getting cancer from water and other stuff. So that's my
Thanks.
big one. Yeah.
Thanks. Dr. Williams?
Yes, I would. Am I trying to get off mute here? Sorry. I would say the Safer Beauty Bill package. And so that's a suite of 4 bills that is being raised on a federal level that looks at providing safer protections for consumers. There's one bill in there, 3620, for women of color and also for those that work in the beauty industry that have an undue burden with the toxins and chemical by the nature of their work. If you think about hairdressers, barbers, and those, and working in nail salons. Whereas we may go in there, from time to time to get our hair or nails done. This is their daily job, and they're exposed to these chemicals, more chronically. And then, as I mentioned earlier, as being targeted, with these chemicals through the products that we use. And so I would really encourage everyone to, read up and learn more about the Safer Beauty Bill package in there. So there's more transparency about these laws, again, for the hazards. And so hopefully we can get greater protections overall for the industry.
Thank you. And and I know we only scratched the surface in terms of the environmental hazards that we are exposed to. We didn't get a chance to talk about things like our communities are usually close to bus depots where the buses are running all the time, and that exhausts the smoke and all that, or we're close to highways and freeways and beltways where a lot of the car exhaust. That's why we see higher rates of asthma in our community. And then, these impact us not just when we're pregnant, but afterwards, right? It's impacting our kids, it's impacting us. And so this is a very far-reaching issue for us. And we only have, unfortunately, an hour to touch on this issue, but I encourage you all, if you have specific questions like that, to put those in the chat. So why don't we go ahead and open it up for any questions? And now I'm going to kick it over to Anya for the first question.
Hey everyone, thanks Regina. The first question is for Dr. Williams. Thank you for the critical work you are doing. Are companies that you are targeting that make hair relaxer and other beauty products fighting and providing disinformation against studies? Oh, this question is really long. So are the companies you are targeting that make hair relaxer and other beauty products fighting and providing disinformation against studies showing there's a link between the products and reproductive diseases and other cancers? That is a loaded question.
Yes, that is. And so, yes, if we look at it, yeah, of course they are. They're trying to subject us as being, not knowing what we're talking about and saying that the claims that are coming forward are not valid, which we know science, and also through the human harm that is providing on there. And so it's a long, case. A long battery of those that are trying to dismiss these claims of that. As I mentioned before, Johnson and Johnson is a really, great, unfortunately, case study of this, where they're, trying to um, mitigate the issue by, opening up other, entities of, their company and different, names. And so that, their major corporation is not going to be able to pay out on these claims because they're saying that they're bankrupt. And so there are a lot of things that are going behind the scene that's really unfortunate. But again, as consumers, really just being an advocate and, going forward to be able to, bring and shed light to these issues. And so that's, consumer advocacy definitely is the way to go.
Thanks, Dr. Williams. The next question is also for you. What is your suggested immediate and long-term actions to address the beauty industry toxins?
It's not going to be solved overnight. Yes, it would be great that we can do this, but I would say, as I mentioned before, awareness. So being first aware that what the issue is, education and about how it provides harm to our bodies for a number decades, years, if not centuries. Right, we've known that Black women have been disproportionately affected with uterine fibroids, and that can be attributed to a lot of different things. The products that we use from feminine hygiene products, with the different types of sprays. Another particular ingredient, in addition to PFAS, is phthalates. Phthalates are a synthetic endocrine disruptor, and so you largely find this is used in scents. And so, fragrant products and things of that nature. And so we can have, just continue, use the products that are made with phthalates in there, or either transparency, so consumers can know what there's in there, what are in these products. And then lastly, I would say policy. And so policy enforcement in there, as we have said, throughout this. And so we can regulate the industry. And so these, toxins and chemicals can get out of these products that we're using. Also regulating the industry in terms of transportation, as was mentioned, that's another huge culprit in terms of the exhaust, the fumes, the toxins in there. So through awareness, education, and policy, I think those would be great, would have set us up great to be able to address the issue at hand.
Thanks, Dr. Williams. This is a question for both you and Mari. What tools can we use to either check the quality of water or check the products that we can use? And I know you mentioned some before, so.
Yeah, I'll go back to saying those apps. So the three that I mentioned, the Environmental Working Group, Clearia, and then Think Dirty are great apps. I'm sure there are more on there, but it's a great way because, you can't decipher, based off of, a glance on what's in there, but they can do a more thorough review of the chemicals in there and also provide you some great, recommendations for those that are, cleaner products.
Um, okay. So first, always check your local water report. That's somewhere you can first start to look for what's inside your water. Second, um, find an independent company that does water testing and get your water tested. Like get your water tested. Like it's possible to get your water tested. So always make sure to get your water tested too. But just do those two things and you'll figure out if your water's clean or not.
Cool. Super helpful both. Another question for Dr. Williams. We have now been hearing a lot about certain fabrics and how they can cause health complications. Are you aware of any studies yet that focus on those particular fabrics and the ingredients in those fabrics, and how they're impacting reproductive health and birth outcomes?
Yes, thank you for that. That's another great, unfortunately, issue at hand is the fashion industry, the fibers that we wear. And so again, the microplastics that can be in there, and you'll largely see these in some of the undergarments and athletic wear. And if you think about where we're wearing these in our most intimate areas of it, and our body is our largest organ. And so as we perspire, it has an introduction for, these toxins and these chemicals or microplastics to get into there. And they're made to be athletic wear, moldable, and to move with our bodies. But breast cancer, I mean, there are some studies that have shown, whether they're definitive or not, but also, it's always great to be on the safe side to look. And so the dyes are another thing. So in addition to the microplastics, if we look at the dyes that are going into making these most vibrant, colorful, garments that we wear, again, in the undergarments and athletic wear, that can also be a potential harm, not only for the vibrant, for our bodies, but also for the environment as well. If we look at, going into the waterways, right, the wildlife and game and, animals that are out there that, are also, utilizing the water around us. And so there's looking at the circular economy. And so oftentimes as a consumer, we just look at the end, right? We go into a store, we shop and we buy something. But another culprit is fast fashion. So we wear a garment once or twice, right? And then what do? We discard it. Where does that go? Oftentimes we donate it, but where does it go if it can't be sold, or if it can't, find a new home? It goes into the landfill, and that creates, additional waste, for the earth and for the climate and the atmosphere that we use. So looking at sustainable habits, and so, whether it be building a capsule wardrobe, so you're minimizing, the amount of garments that you're wearing, but also being, smart and by, looking at sustainable, fabrics as well. And so thank you for that question. That's something also to look at as well.
Thanks so much, Dr. Williams. We have a few more minutes for questions, so folks, feel free to get them in the Q&A box. This next question is for Mari. How did you come about that opportunity to create your own water filter? And then what advice would you give to someone who's interested in creating a product that can help solve another type of environmental issue?
Sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. Can you re-ask that question, please?
Anya, you're on mute.
Oh, of course, I'm on mute. Sorry, I'll do it in two parts because it was a really long question. So the first part is, how did you come about the opportunity to create your own water filter?
Well, I came with that idea to want to create my own water filter because when I first started doing my water drives, it was fun for the time being, but I had to think about my environment because people kept on littering. That's a lot of plastic. You don't want plastic just being littered and thrown around. So I took it upon myself to let's do something that still, is gonna give you clean water, but let's do it in a way that it's safe for the environment. So that's why I ended up creating my own water filter because it's way more efficient than having to constantly go out to buy bottle of water because bottles of water, like packs of water, it's expensive. Like it's expensive. Like imagine how much money people were spending just to get cases of water just to last them so they got a shower, cook with, do this and that. Like you don't want to spend that much. Like you don't want to keep on having to go to the store all the time. So yeah.
Thank you. And then the second part of the question is, if you have any, what advice would you give to someone who's interested in creating a product that can help solve another type of environmental issue?
Thank you. Find an expert that knows what they're doing. Always find an expert that knows what they're doing. I work with a family friend chemist, so that's how we ended up getting. So that's so sorry, her thingy just went off. But yeah, find somebody that is trusted because you don't want somebody random going in and testing your water and then them saying, "Oh, your water's perfectly fine." Lo and behold, your water isn't actually fine. Like, so find an expert. Find an expert. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Few more questions. This one is for Dr. Williams. How can we continue this advocacy for environmental and reproductive justice abroad?
I would say align with organizations such as In Our Own Voice is a great one. Black Women for Wellness was another one I mentioned. They're based in Los Angeles, California. We Act for Environmental Justice is in New York. I'm also for Cena Girl Jones. We, covered the whole gamut as well. So finding out based off of where you live geographically, if there are some, social activists organizations that you can align with. Also voting, we also have a level of influence, through our vote. I know as election day is upon us, reproductive justice is definitely at hand and is at stake. And so being able to, use our power through our voice, our collective voices is another meaningful way that we can do that. As I mentioned before, through policy. So social activism is a great way to become involved. There are many organizations. So again, I would just, seek out, what are some of the local organizations where you live. And so where you can, get additional support and where you can actually, go about this work and, do it on a greater scale.
I actually have a question, Anya, if I could, and while we're waiting for more. So because we didn't really have a chance to talk about climate change. And so I wondered if we could touch on that a little bit. So, we've seen in places like North Carolina, in Florida, these hurricanes, these extreme weather events. How do those have an impact on reproductive health? People don't always see that connection, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. And so whether extreme weather, whether it be hot, or either cold, it can also cause stress in the body. So if we think about, the growing, fetus in our body in utero, that can lead to, oftentimes preterm labor, which has, sometimes, poor diminished outcomes, but also it can put additional stress on the mother at hand at too. And so if they're thinking about lack of resources, so if you don't have access to, water, or food, that it can also be, a hazard, for the maternal, mother as well. And so having heightened temperatures, again, can cause stress and even the cold. And so being able to, having to find, shelter in terms of, hurricane or any of these, unforeseen, events that, are due to, climate change definitely can have an effect on the fetus and on the mother as well. And so looking, to find, safe havens or either, creating a, a safety plan in action. So before these events happen, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Who's going to be your contact? Where is going to be your safe space? And so looking at this. And so it's thinking ahead. And so that's what we, try to do in public health is by looking at, the problem and finding, preventable actions, before, events can, before these events can occur, or either how do we remedy the solutions afterwards.
Yeah, and I think another thing we often find out is that when we do have these, for instance, like hurricanes, a lot of times people have to move and relocate. So they're
Yes.
displaced.
Yes.
Then they
That's
don't
right.
have access to doctors. They may not have access to their birth control pills. Studies have shown when people are uprooted, they have increase for things like sexual violence. So these issues really do touch on a lot of different things that impact our sexual and reproductive health.
Yes. Infertility as
Anya,
well.
have there been some other questions since then?
Yeah, I actually want to end on a really interesting question that was addressed to Dr. Williams and you, Regina. So I think we can end it on this one. I often hear that voting changes things. However, the industry pays to keep the local government in office to avoid addressing environmental racism. How would you encourage people to vote when they rarely see anything change for them? For example, Flint still has bad water. I did early voting. However, I only do so to honor those who sacrificed their life, not because I believe voting changes things.
That is a great question. I would say voting with your heart and your heart posture and knowing that, it takes, some people say that, well, one vote doesn't change, but it's a collective action of all of us coming together to vote. And, hopefully getting the right people into office that are going to be able to make some changes, some meaningful changes on there. So again, you have your level of influence, as you vote, but still have faith in the system and being able to have those that are going to be in office to make these changes.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much,
and
Regina.
I would remind us of that quote, that power concedes nothing without demand. What that means is that power does not willingly give up power. People have to be compelled and forced. And that only comes when we demand change. And if that's anything that the civil rights movement has taught us, that the South has taught us, is that that is the only way that we see change, is by rising up, by resistance. And it does happen. We can look at in our history, in our time, things like we have more access to healthcare. It's not perfect, but we have seen advancements, we have seen changes. And so that's actually the job of us, is to remain hopeful, to keep fighting, to keep applying the pressure, to keep the resistance, because that's a critical part of the policy making process, is that we have the lawmakers for sure, but they earn our votes. We keep them in office. And so we don't just go to in the ballot box, dip our ballots and then walk away. We say, okay, now that we put you in office, we're going to keep the receipts. And when those receipts come due, we're going to hold you accountable. And if you don't do what you say, then we vote you out, right? I always have to say this. Black women are some of the most decisive voters. We are the largest voting bloc in the American electorate. We often carry these elections by our votes, right? This is why we say things like, don't take us for granted. It's because we know, and they know, that they need our vote. And so when they need our votes, we need to make sure they earn our vote.
What a great way to end the Q&A. Thank you so much, Regina, Dr. Williams. Regina, I will turn it back to you to close us out.
Yes, so unfortunately, the 4-part series is coming to an end. I want to just give our panelists about a minute to close us out with any closing remarks. And thank you all for participating. After the panelists give their remarks, we'll close with our call to action, which we do with everyone. And why don't we start with Mari? What's some things that in the last minute or so, what are some things you want to leave our viewers with?
I guess like the last thing I have to say is please go vote. Like please go vote, because once again, you gotta vote for somebody who's gonna care about reproductive rights. So make sure to vote. Make sure to go check your water levels, go get your water tested, and don't forget about Flint.
And I would continue on in that vein, as I mentioned, that, we all have a level of power and influence. And so voting, policy enactment, becoming involved. And so I know that was one of the questions, what can you do? Again, finding, ways that you can find collectivism in terms of activism, joining groups, getting involved with other, agencies and organizations. Reproductive health and reproductive issues is definitely a human right. And so being able to have autonomy over our body, agency, to be able to make these decisions is definitely something that we should not take for granted. And so being able to, fight for that is by being involved. And so that's why I would just say it's just like, think about what ways that you can continue to, support, policies and becoming aware. Again, each one teach one. And so as you become aware and, knowledgeable about these issues, share it with your network, your circle of influence. So whether that be your friends, your family, your colleagues, all those within your networks. And so we can band together to ultimately, make great decisions here. So, thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, we are stronger together. And now I will ask Anya to close us out with our call to action.
Thank you so much, Regina. So as our panelists have said, we are less than a week out from the election, or I should say exactly a week out from the election. So if you're looking to get involved and make a difference, please remember to go vote for the candidates who support us. Echoing Mari and Dr. Williams again, please go vote, and also stay informed by reading the Reproductive Justice Policy Agenda at the link that's linked in the slide. And then additionally, keep up with In Our Own Voice Action Fund on Instagram and Facebook, as well as spreading the word about this important work with your network. And then thanks so much. Please stay connected with us. These are a list of all of the speakers today, as well as In Our Own Voice Action Fund and Regina, where you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. So please, please, please go vote, and please spread this important work with your networks.
Thank you again for joining us. Tell a friend, encourage them to watch the replay, and most important, let's get out there and vote.